Ah, cool. 30 seconds to go.
Perfect. 30 seconds to go. Oh, we'll have to fill some. This will go on the YouTube video, so we'll have to fill some time here. Try.
Well, I'm just grateful that you asked me along again, because we spoke so long before, during, and after. I couldn't remember what it actually said, and then since then, like loads more. Like I speak to Alex, and that's another piece, and it's constantly building and building all of this stuff. So, no, I'm a different person to the one that I was that spoke to you. Like,
yeah, I think I am as well, to be honest.
And you're live.
And welcome to Kindasound today on the Reality Bite Show. I nearly forgot what we were doing then, Troy. On the Reality Bite Show with me, your host, Wendy Smith. And I have my guest back, Troy Martin. I've had Troy on before. He's from my neck of the woods, originally from Danbury in Essex, so grew up just down the road from me. And Troy came on, shared some of his life experience, but more the fact at the moment, Troy has been working within, I'm going to say within the legal system of a fashion, learning about legalities, life, and the big game of chess, where we've been taught how to play drafts.
Yeah, that's right. Do you want me to?
I remember you saying that to me, Troy, last time. I said I see it like a big game of chess where we've been taught 1% of the moves, and you said no, we've been taught how to play drafts.
Different game, yeah.
And,
yeah, sorry, go on, carry on.
Oh no, yes, it was a different game that just made me laugh. So I use that as the analogy now when I talk to people. So for those lovely listeners this morning, and for the viewers who are going to watch this, what we're going to do is probably wander through a bit of both of mine and Troy's life experience so far, of unpacking all this stuff and learning about some bits and pieces, which is, I suppose, what's the word? It's all like an illusion, really, isn't it? We've been living in this massive illusion that we should have to, otherwise we get penalised, do certain things, but we never knew we had a choice.
That's absolutely correct. Another way of putting it is that we've been slaves, and you do what you're told and you'll be okay. And there's like no alternative to this slavery. And if you ever glimpse it, it's, you know, the sort of nasty, hard, brutish and short type of thing. And of course, the opposite of slavery, I imagine our listener will know, is freedom. And it is actually pretty hard. And you can glimpse this freedom or slavery in a number of different ways. We were talking earlier, a lot of people glimpse it through what I would call the health portal, or for those listeners who are UK based and old enough to remember play school, you could say it's through the round window. But there are a number of different windows of getting into this, and it is represented, and a very good way of understanding it is that there's two worlds, and you could say a line down the middle. The Whittle.
And is that a new place in the country? I don't know.
Yeah. And this slave world is a perfect reflection, in inverted commas, perfect, of the real world, except, and that both of them are the game of drafts, if you could say the black pieces and the white pieces or what have you, but that the whole world is the game. And, you know, there's, I try to remember how many draft pieces there are. There's 32 pieces on a 64 block board. And you could argue, you know, so to think of the game, to use the analogy, each of those pieces is an area to discover. And on one side, you've been presented with the mirror image, which is intended to enslave you. And I can't emphasize that enough. The sole entire purpose of the way in which that world has been constructed is to control and enslave and take away all of your resources. That is its ultimate aim.
And can we just discuss that a little bit for the listeners? Because I find that one very interesting. This word, because of everything that I've ever associated with slavery, I actually find this word hard to say. I really do. I don't, and I'm not actually quite sure why, but for me to consider I've never considered myself a slave to anything. And realistically, I'm in a system of I'm a walking, living, breathing slave, and I find that word really hard to say and like connect with myself, because it's not who I feel I am. Yet I'm stuck in this system at the moment.
Yeah.
And how do we get to that point of slavery so we all end up sleepwalking, I think is more the point I'm making, Troy.
Yeah, the reason it's slavery is because it's all about control. I mean, let's look at it. People in the UK be very concerned about their utility bills at the moment. Now, the hike in utility bills is completely unnecessary. Or let us posit the fact that it's completely unnecessary. If it is completely unnecessary, what is its purpose? Well, there'll be a group of people to whom it means absolutely nothing. It just means they'll be saving slightly less at the end of the month. But for the vast majority, it means a great deal. And this concept, you can sort of only define slavery by defining what freedom is, can't you? Because you say, you could say, let's not use slavery. Let's just use the word, whilst you know what you are as a free living human being, are you really able to operate as a free living human being? And you could actually argue, well, okay, but why aren't I able to operate as a free living human being? And the first sort of condition of freedom is that you take full, unlimited liability and responsibility for every single one of your actions. Now, I can feel some people almost, they hear the words, but and see that's okay. But the moment you face full responsibility, it's not that you can't do it. You find, hey, this is unfamiliar territory.
Massively. That's the personal development journey. It's one of the main areas I work in, is awareness, then ownership, self-responsibility, and then action. So you have to become aware, first of all of the thoughts you're thinking, they're coming out of your head. All the emotions you're running, guess where they're coming from? Out of your body. Someone doesn't throw them into you. All of the behaviors you're demonstrating, guess where they're coming from? You. So like you say, the awareness, when you raise awareness of it, people, they'll shift in their skin and they'll be like, oh no, this isn't, I'm angry because that person didn't do that, or I'm not happy because they didn't shut the dishwasher, it's their fault. And you have to stop all that, don't you? The self-responsibilities, you have to stop the blame, the judgments, tune your ego up, get rid of your bias, work on the self on a daily basis, take back control, be powerful instead of the powerless externals.
That's beautifully put, which is probably why you work in that area. The point is, I suppose my point is that, and you started mentioning it there, that person is down to that person, and why isn't that person sorted out for me? So why doesn't that person sort it out? It's their fault, not mine. And why doesn't that person sort it out for me? Now, those are the conditions of the slave world that you are taught before you even know you're learning them. And that's why very few people come to the realization that you're talking about, Wendy, without having to go through, and I'll call it various dark nights of the soul.
Massive, yeah.
And the one thing no one wants to go through is a dark night of the soul, because it's hard, and it manifests differently to every individual. Let's call living persons individuals, and it is a highly emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental exercise. And those who would wish to control know this.
Yeah.
Though if you want to go back into the history, which may not be the real history, but you don't see a lot about there being any formal education whatsoever before about 1860 in this country.
No, it was all skill set based, handed down from the family. Out you went,
and look at, look, if you will, at buildings that were built, clothes that were made, that was made by these so-called quote unquote uneducated people before they put in compulsory education. And I think we talked about this before, but we are slaves by design, not by natural condition.
Yeah.
And the reason, and you're talking about things here, and a lot of these things we're starting to realize, and this is because this knowledge has been hidden. And what I am finding out every day is more and more things which had been hidden. And I would say at this point, the most important thing when you're on this journey is to be able to discern or sort the wheat from the chaff.
Yes.
Or what am I really reading here? What does this mean? Why did the Queen die 2 days after swearing in Liz Truss, who seems to be about 8 foot tall, and the Queen's about 2 foot tall? Discern, if you will, that things probably aren't as they are being presented to you.
On that point as well, actually on the news, this baffled me. They actually have said on the news that the Queen had been laying in state in Westminster for 4 years.
Yeah.
They've already said, like you say, are you, one, I suppose, listening to the information that's actually coming out, because everything has always got to be in plain sight anyway. That's how all games are played, or that's the rules of the games.
There are rules of the game. That's absolutely right.
And it was just that one the other day. They're basically on the television box, the television box. It actually had stated the Queen has been laying in state in Westminster for 4 years. And it was like, when you look, sorry, I know I've just thrown a random thing in there, Troy.
But it's a really important point. Now, the point that I pick up there, and this is important when you go down the legal and lawful route and you're doing things, don't for 1 minute think that the folk who have designed this slave system, who aren't the ones who execute it, they're just people who are executing the process. Don't think for one moment that there are any mistakes in what they do.
No.
They are not very imaginative. That's why, oh, we've had COVID, let's have monkeypox. But everything they do, and I've worked with people who I think are able to think like these people. And I would say there's people of a certain religion have absolutely amazing ability to understand how these things are arranged, because their religion was hijacked by a certain group who pretend to be what they are and aren't really. But it's all back to discernment. So most people will want to believe that Boris Johnson was an idiot because he presents as an idiot, and who's going to listen to Omicron 4 and all that sort of thing? No, that they have certain plays and they'll play the play all the way through. But if it works, if it works, we'll do this. And if it doesn't work, we'll do that. They don't leave anything to chance. And if you're trying to enslave the world and become the total controllers, then you're not going to be a fool. Mm. On the other side, and you talked about the living person and this is who I am, and as well as being taught how to play their system through the education game that they've been playing on us, what they've also done is hidden our true potential from us. And I imagine every single one of your listeners will at some point, even if it was only for 10 minutes, been really excited and interested in something, and the amount that they understood about that something was enormous. It's a bit like my Friday evening feeling, but when you're applying your mind to something. And that's just almost a sort of glimpse of what the true potential of human beings is, and how that is deliberately being suppressed. And the suppression works well with the sort of the levels of consciousness. So being suppressed down into the sort of lower level where there's some awful nasty things, as opposed to being able just naturally like the cream rise to the top of the bottle, which is some way above where we are now. But all of, and back to the practicalities, all of that sort of, what's the word? All of that requires or means that you have to go through dark nights of the soul. And I've always believed in the soul. My mum said, you know, you've got a soul. And that was really important. I've always known I had a soul. But in terms of your body, should we say your body aligning with your soul, that means your emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical, which is where most of us get into this through the round window.
Yeah.
We have to go through dark nights of those souls as well, should we, those elements of our soul. Now, this is, by the way, I'm not making this up, but this is not a philosophy that I have. This is just me pulling things together within this conversation that seem to work and explain it best.
Well, that is true. It's the waking up of the self and the power of who you actually are. We're not just a flesh puppet trotting about that has an experience and then dies. You know, that's not what we are. We're energetic beings at the very base of us. We, at particle form, atomic form, you know, what is it? An atom, 99.9% nothing. We are space and time in ourselves. You know, how deep do you want to go with this? And like you say, the power that we hold as an energetic being, we create reality. Correct. We are the actual creators of our reality experience, and we do this through many different ways. And like you say, a lot of the knowledge has been hidden. I've only been exploring this subject for about 20 years. And, you know, my knowledge is minuscule compared to some people I know, and I'm on a learning curve every day. But just waking up to the fact, I don't know, a long time ago when I got into this, of actually the thoughts I'm thinking, they're mine. You know, the emotions. I used to say, oh, you made me really angry.
You made
me really
fingers
angry.
Pointed at me.
Yeah, that's it. And it was the awareness of that when I was taught that, well, hold on, where does the emotion come from? You know, how does that person give you anger? Well, they made me angry. Well, explain that to me. How do they pick up the anger and put it into your body?
You take offense. You take offense.
You generate something in you regarding it. And then you have a choice. That's what I never used to realize. When that anger comes up, I didn't need to give it to someone. I could just go like, wow, that's interesting. You've just said something and I've had a massive angry reaction to it on the inside. Where do you want to go with this one? You know, rather than just throwing it out. And the more you learn these things, the more you go to a powerful place within yourself. Because when you're giving your power over to everything outside of you, you're powerless. You're powerless to life and life experience, aren't you? And that's part of the process, isn't it? That, like you say, the schooling system, when it was brought in, beat you down, make you compare yourself to other people, get you to respond out of fear, so consequence and fear, never feel that general self-worth, and then you'll do as you're told.
And people might say, I thought they're going to talk about legal stuff. Why are they going on and on about this?
Because this is very important.
The point is, this is it. This is like what we're doing. The legal things is. This is like the entire chessboard and all the pieces, if you will. And each of those, you know, these realizations. As you were talking, I was thinking about they used to, because I have done sales, whatever that means, or relationship management for my sins in the past. And the sales trainer who I sort of loved, this guy. He was just brilliant at what he did. And he used to say, and he's from the Northeast, so which always sort of says, what you got in your kit bag? So all you're learning, what you were learning is what have I got in my kit bag? Which in this case was, what do I understand about the products that I'm bringing to this meeting, and how they will satisfy what this person actually wants. And what we're talking about here, this learning and the dark nights of the soul, is we're filling up our kit bag.
Yeah.
which there's nothing in our there's very, very little in our kit bag, because they've got rid of it all. And I also, as you were talking, I was listening to something else as I was doing my walk in the morning, and one of the guys, they were talking depth about legislation and what have you, and the guy was saying, let's not forget that we've got this overarching, it's all about believing, and in that sense, you've heard this, people say this, people welcome not the trauma. You don't really welcome the trauma, but you understand that it is part of, let's say, the divine plan that you are creating. You create the divine plan for yourself. It's not someone out there, someone with a great big beard sitting on a cloud. And then the guy said, yeah, he said, and they were saying about the way in which they really control us, really control us, is by getting us to attach to, both physically, emotionally, and everything else, to material things.
Yeah.
Immediately, listeners, that's like, imagine you're a balloon, right? Every material attachment that you have is letting the air out of your balloon. And no matter how far you blow it, like, you can go to Wendy and say, I feel really empowered. And someone will say, oh, they've just clamped your car, and you'll just collapse.
Yeah.
Oh, my car. Oh, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't care about these things, but it's the attachment. And then one of the guys said, oh yeah, there's a great biblical quote for that. And I can't remember what he said, but it was to the extent that, don't worry about that, because your Lord, your God, will provide you with it. And that was perfectly in context. And, I'm walking along, and literally I went, poof, it just tears. I don't walk along. And I thought, wow, that meant something to me. Whatever that was, that really, because I am clearly still very linked into material stuff.
Aren't we all, though?
Yeah.
Troy, it's been ingrained. And then
it's like, it's within me to do that. And I'm also very linked into my wife and my children and my family. And, because the question is, well, that's all very well, but how do I bring them along with me and what have you? And the bottom line is, and I said this to someone this morning, I know I tend to veer along, and someone who has really got themselves deep in it because they just have ignored everything. And this is only debt. I'll say this is only debt. It's one of the easiest things to deal with.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
And they're like, no, I've got this letter, send it. I said, look, you've got to understand what I'm saying you should say in this letter. And you really must do some research. Whether they listen to me or not doesn't matter in a way. But the point, I was going to get to is, but you've got to follow your own nose. Don't look at something because Troy said you were going to look at it. It might be a place to start, but you are you, and I am me, and Wendy is Wendy. And what we're trying to do here is give people pointers and things that, so you throw a load of stuff. It's a bit like Jack Regan in The Sweeney said, when spaghetti's done because you throw it at the wall and it sticks. Now, I don't even know if that's true, but a friend of mine at university used to say that all the time. So it became part of the folklore. And what we're doing is trying to sort of weave a picture and touch on a number of points so that people can find that and then follow their nose. Because that's what I'm doing.
And then use this is the one thing you've got me to do, which is how, like I say, we met, was instead of just using, someone else's templates and reading things. And I've done all the study. We've got a wonderful friend, David Edelman, who's a lawyer, and I've done all of his study. Now, some of it just bounces off my brain. It hurts, literally, it hurts. And no matter how many times I look at some of the SDARs, I'm like that.
The 18 questions about PCNs. And
I cannot send.
I finally worked those out about a month ago.
PCNs are easy. They're easy if you just apply common sense to it and read what they've written. But for me, with some things, when I was going to send them, I'd look at it and think, I don't even know what I'm sending. And it's the point is, if you have no knowledge around the subject of what you're actually doing, then you're going to be sitting in fear still. because when you get a response to it, you're going to be like, I don't know what to do now. I'm going to send another template letter. I have no idea what this template means, but have that. So the connecting to self, adding some self into this as well, isn't it?
And that's also where discernment comes in. When they send you a letter, remember, they don't even know what they're doing, but they've been doing it for so long. This is what they do.
Yeah.
And they will present anything in commerce, as you said, in a window. I love that window envelope you said before we came on. You know, company to company, internal mail within the UK corporation. Yeah. It's not a country, guys. It's a corporation. You don't live in the UK. They say, you owe us £1,950.
Pounds of what? Sugar? Lead?
Yeah. Well, £1,950 is not what you think it is, because it's not money. It has to be written out 1,000 and as a sum certain and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I was talking to someone who have been sort of helping along the way, and what I like about this particular person is they do get it, but if they're not, I think their background is I'm going to make sure I get this. So they ask like really good, stupid questions, which make you stop and think, which are absolutely brilliant. And I was trying to sort of explain what these people are doing when they put something through the door like that. And I said, like, it's like your data is your property, and it's your property, and no one else can do anything with your property unless you give them permission or you've agreed something, and that has to be written down. So, for example, I said, someone's going to come and knock at your door in 5 minutes, and they're going to just say, can I come in? I want it in your toilet.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to say no, aren't you? That's the equivalent. People cannot walk into your property and do what they like with it. They can't use your property. And forget about it being, oh, it's my privacy. Just think of it as property.
Yeah.
Have I either settled that property in an arrangement where people can do that, or have I signed an agreement whereby I'm exchanging my property for their property, which is a fair and equitable exchange?
And if not,
there's no agreement.
There's no agreement. And this is, you know, where we are getting somewhere, guys. Honestly, this morning we really are. There'll be a concluding point to this at the end of the show, I'm sure. Well, so we're going to chuck a song in though, Troy, because otherwise me and you are going to talk, and the listeners are going to be going, "Can we have a song?"
I pity them really that they've turned this on hoping to be entertained.
They got me and you dragging them through the legal system, but there's some light at the end of the tunnel for everybody. And we're going to start with Boston and More Than a Feeling. Why do you like this song?
It's one of those, it's really important. It's back to, I think, 74, 75, and it captured the zeitgeist of the moment, shall we say. And everyone of my age should remember the first time they heard this song, because it just sort of like took us by storm, as it were. So there you go.
To a different level. Right, Django, if you wouldn't mind then, please, a bit of More Than a Feeling this morning, please.
That's the one.
You're off air.
You know it from the first bar.
Yeah, I think that first bit where we went, which we didn't plan, and you could see it was like, yeah, this is the people saying, I mean, you hear this, oh, you know, it's what you really think and feel that's important. And I would guarantee that 99.9% of people say, yeah, I know that, but I don't really believe it.
Yeah.
I don't. And, you know, you've seen it sort of ridiculed in South Park, where they're sort of the psychics, and the guy walks up and goes to the police, and they just gun him down. Now, actually, what South Park is saying, I believe, is you do have the power, but you have to use your power proportionately in the right places. And if you think you're going to turn around a 10,000 people army with your intention, that ain't going to happen.
Probably not going to happen in this dimension. Might happen in another dimension. I'll just skip dimensions.
Well, ultimately, my view would be, if you found your power, and power is about wisdom, which is about self-knowledge, which is about sort of, you might call it bravery, but it's a bit like I like that line in If, when you can face triumph and disaster and treat both imposters just the same, because they become an imposter in your mind.
Yeah.
You decide good, bad, up, down. And what that is saying is, once you can get away from this dichotomy, this binary, this sort of, then you're there, because God, and God, Bible basher, or all this stuff that's been, God is always represented as pure white light.
Yeah, well, I mean, I look at it like source energy.
That's it.
The source energy of everything is just a, white biophotonic light force that drives everything with frequency and vibration and turns it into matter.
Yeah, so the creator, that creator, call it what you will, that creative force has created us.
Yeah.
And
we have that creative force within us. It's not without us, it's within us. And
because there's a trust that the owner of the force has created a trust on our behalf, of which we are the beneficiary. It's called the divine person. Because you have the divine person, then you have the physical in personam person,
then you have the legal entity.
Then you have the legal entity. I know you know all this, but and once I had to get over this, I don't care about legal entity versus person.
No, it's all the same old shit, isn't it, to be honest?
Yeah, it's about when you go to equity, and we'll have to talk about processes that people go through, and then how you resolve disputes. I think
resolving disputes is the one thing I've done. I had a friend do a Zoom call for everybody the other night about making offers for those people who haven't got the balls to stand up and do some of the stuff that we're doing, because it does, you get stuck in fear and you got to go through, like I say, dark night of the soul a few times. So I got him to come on and just do a couple of hours Zoom call about how everything, you're in a contract, you can make an offer. So actually, if you're not able to pay your bills through financial hardship, you make an offer. And if you've done that 3 times and they say no, there's nothing to pay. So it's just knowing contract law in that space, and that you've been equitable in your dealings and you've made your offers. So that was interesting. But what I was going to say to you is the waking up to all this process was interesting for me. And the first point of coming out of fear, because I've never feared authority apart from my dad. He was the only, we were brought up, Dad, police, no, don't care, no interest in any of that. School, ain't got no interest in you. Because when they'd say, I'll phone your parents, I'd go, good luck with that.
That's right, I remember you said, yeah.
Good luck with that one. Because it was just Dad.
30 seconds.
Thank you. But it was the going into a supermarket when everybody was queuing up outside, and I've walked up because I don't watch the TV, and thought, what are all these crazy people doing? I need to go and get some milk. And I remember just walking past them thinking, what are they doing? And this guy going, no, you've got to socially distance. And I said, sorry, mate, I've got a what? I'm going to get
some. What does that mean? Yeah.
And he was all like this, trying to stop. I went, excuse me.
Radio, the station for a global community.
You.
And you're live.
And welcome back to Kindasound this morning. So you're going to have to excuse me and Troy, when the music's playing, we're having conversations. So we're going to probably bring these conversations in. But this sort of wanders in. We're going to get into dispute processes shortly, aren't we, Troy?
We are.
I just wanted to bring in the conversation Troy and I were having prior to coming back on air, which is based around how do you get out of fear? And for me, the biggest awakening was March 2020, when we went into this lockdown. I honestly didn't know anything was happening. I really didn't, because I don't watch the news, or, I just didn't. And I went to go to my local supermarket, and there was a queue of people outside of the supermarket. And I thought, what are these people all doing queuing up outside? It's quite cold. And they were all sort of stood strange distance apart from it. And I just, me in the morning, I just thought, well, I'm weird. They must be obviously waiting for a special offer or something. So I just walked straight through the doors round, excuse me, like toddled in as I do. And this young store supervisor, he said, like, oh, stop, you've got to go and queue up. I said, for what? And it's like, well, you need to social distance. I said, I'm sorry, I need to do what? And he said, it's because of the pandemic. And I was like, what pandemic? I said, mate, I just want some milk. Like that. So I've just kept, because I was half asleep, and I just thought, I haven't got the headspace for this morning.
Yeah.
And he just kept on, and he kept on, and he kept on. And there were all these arrows on the floor, and he was following me going, and the milk's over there. And he wanted me to go up and down this aisle. I said, mate, I'm going there. I said, you just crack on, do what you're doing. I'm going over there. And I just thought, what an odd experience. So I went and got my milk and went and paid, and everybody in the queue was like, oh, she's queue jumping, you know, in a pandemic. And I was thinking, what the hell is going on? And then, you know, got home and then realised, obviously, you know, I'd had a conversation with mum and she's like, what do you reckon on all this? And I was like, oh, well, I don't know, sort of thing. It's just really weird to go to a supermarket and see all these people stood outside. But once I'd been told about the pandemic, you know, I'm going to do it in inverted commas, and everything around it, the funny thing was, the next time I went to the supermarket, I had this weird thing like, do I stand in the line? Like, I then had this, whereas before I had no fear, nothing, just trotted in the supermarket, was like, you're all crazy, what are you doing? But then when I'd been told about it, and it was like this weird school thing kicked in again, you must now do this. And it was like, actually, I don't do things like that. So I'm not going to do that. And then I remember walking into the next shop that I went in, I think it was Tesco's, and I was running like massive anxiety because I walked straight past the queue, straight in. And the guy went to say something to me, and I must have had a really aggressive face on because I went, not interested, and just carried on walking. And he didn't know what to say to me. But then I did my whole shop, Troy, with anxiety, thinking like, now am I going to get arrested for walking in a supermarket to go and buy my groceries? And it was, you know, so then I dropped back into the program. And how easy is it to drop into that program because of what we've been taught?
Yeah. It's the phrase that springs to mind, which I like, is what a guy called Tom Barnett uses. It's a mind virus.
Yeah.
And they've infected you with these mind viruses. Although a virus isn't really an infective agent and all that sort of thing, but let's leave that to one side.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like a sort of mind control, an MK Ultra that people don't believe in, but there are triggers. And when they were putting this shit out on the telly, and even the words, we've got those triggers within us. And what happened there was that you were triggered, and suddenly you had anxiety, where the good thing is you knew you didn't need to have that anxiety, and you knew that this anxiety had been triggered. It doesn't make the anxiety go away, but it's a step towards freeing yourself from the anxiety. It's a bit like if you think you're psychotic and it's your problem, but actually, and you think, well, I've got these voices in my head, these entities telling me things, and it doesn't feel like my problem, but it's manifested as my problem. And then someone comes along and says, look, don't tell anyone because the drug companies won't like it, but there are actually entities in your head. Yeah. All of a sudden, that's the step. Now, guess what, everyone? Knowing about free notice processes and dispute resolution, everything else, will not make the fear go away.
No.
You will make the fear go away once you learn what your fear is triggered by and how you will master it. And actually, I use that word, I didn't know why I used the word master, but you immediately think of like some sort of, sort of like kung fu or something, grasshopper. And someone who's spent many years mastering things. Now, I actually think that's a metaphor for life, that the whole purpose of life is to master life, to master this level and move on. But it's not just doing kung fu. Your life is there to master everything. And the mind virus is, you'll never be a kung fu master unless you spent your entire life doing it. To which most folk who I grew up with say, bugger that, I'm going down the pub. So always never allow someone else to tell you what you can do. And that doesn't mean that you're like Cartman in South Park, where he runs around saying, I can do what I want. No, that's not what it is at all. And this is the main point I want to make. And this is probably the question that people may be asking or thinking, why are we in this why are we in this situation? If we're all like Wendy, which we are, we're all living people, why are we like this? And we are like this because we have consented and chosen this way. And what I really, really, really like is it is incredibly simple. We have chosen immorality over morality. So if you want to know what that world looks like, where you have unlimited liability, but you're not a slave, it's a moral world. And if you look at esoteric law stuff, law is moral.
Massively, yes.
Moral is law. It's like law is simply
do no harm,
morality,
cause no loss.
yeah, expressed for us, our divine selves, that we can then in person do that, and actually then in thing do that. But that's been perverted, literally, metaphorically, and everything else you want to do, into immorality. So to such an extent that people would really struggle to know what was moral and what was immoral, because a lot of things that you think are moral have been planted there as mind viruses to say you must do this. So, but it often it says you must not do this.
Well, it's
So
the moral relativity. So one of the things I did study, I think 2020, was Satanism. I just wanted to have a little look. Mark Passio does some lovely seminars on Satanism.
This is from Mark Passio. Immoral and Moral is Mark Passio's film he brought out in November last year.
Oh, okay. I've not seen that one yet.
It's
just the fact of moral relativity. And this is what Troy's talking about, guys that are listening. Moral relativity is man-made law. So basically, let's use alcohol, for example. So you can drink over here at the age of 16, but you can't drink over here until you're 18, and you can only drink over there when you're 21. And then if you drink in this state, we're going to lock you up for 3 years. And then if you drink over here, we're going to cut your head off for it, you know, or maybe you get your right hand cut off for it. So it's when someone, a man, has decided to make a law, and it is, these laws are to confuse you. It is the confusion, the inverted model of reality. So you don't know what way is up or down, what way is left or right. And you know, when you really do get that, and you can see that, you can start unpicking things and go back to your moral compass.
Yeah.
We all have a moral compass on the inside that will tell you right from wrong.
And sometimes it's broken and needs to be fixed, but you do have it.
Yes.
And what they offer you in their morally relativistic world is something called solipsism, which is another of the 4 principles of Satanism, whereas you decide what's right. Well, there cannot be a more inverted view of the world than everyone deciding what's right. But that's what is taught. Yeah. You can decide for yourself what's right. Actually, no, you can't. In this man-made world, you can, and that's where they want you. They want you confused. You're deciding this. Oh, I thought that was okay, or not anymore. But I believe this, and I am the center of the universe, so I'm going to say that this is right, because I need to be this. And then there's so many things layered upon layered about, like, what is our position in the universe? What is the nature of the creator? Where do we sit within that hierarchy of law? Now, I'll answer that question for everyone to get onto law.
Yeah.
We sit below the creator, and then the monarch sits below us, and then Parliament assembled, and the bishop and the Lords spiritual and temporal and the commons sit below that. And then anyone who sits below that is either an agent of those above, or they have consented to do so. And that's the basic principle of the hierarchy of law. Should we get on to a bit of law?
Yeah, let's get on to some law.
So we've been talking a lot about law, and essentially we've been talking about law as it applies to the living person. So Wendy's been saying, you know, like, you do no harm. You actually, I cut you off, I think, but it's like, there are basic simple rules. And if you want to go and learn the basic simple rules, folks, read the Old Testament for contract law and read the New Testament for basically equity. So, you know, really difficult equity and law. It's fear not, love thy neighbor, love thyself as thy God. You know, so immediately you're up there. And then contract law is basically, there are rules which you should play and the things that you should and shouldn't do. And contract is not bad. And you have contracts, always have contracts. Trusts are not bad. Systems are not necessity bad, but it's how they are run. And I think the most important thing to do if you embarking on this journey is to remember you may have rights, but if you don't know what they are, you don't have any rights.
Yes.
So by knowing what they are, there's a start. And then by learning how to apply them well, they become more. And the one thing I would say with anyone embarking on this journey, if you think that you're sending 3 well-crafted letters to a senior person within a corporation, and of course, what they're going to do is, oh, damn, the game is up. John Smith has caught me out. Look at these 3 letters that he sent to me that I'm sitting at my desk reading and are in terrible fear. Yes, that's it. Well done, John Smith. Thank you very much. No, what you are doing with those 3 letters, there's a purpose to this, Wendy. So the whole, you know, we could talk for ages, but ultimately, let's talk at the top. Ultimately, any dispute between 2 private people can only be settled in the court, because the court is an independent process. Don't start sending me emails about how it's not and how it's corrupt and all that sort of. I'm talking about how the court should be, and you have to learn how to use the court as it should. And what prevails over everything, and I've listened to a number of, so we've got Mark Passio, I've mentioned peacekeepers.org, and Mark Horn, as David Edelman. The one, and there was also a chap who's recently gone on and started talking about constitutional law and how everything is treason, and there's been nothing, every act passed since 1973 is null and void, which, by the way, I agree with, having researched it myself. But they are consistent, all consistent on one thing, that your remedy sits in equity.
Yes.
What is equity, I hear you cry?
What is equity, Troy?
So basically, you have, in very simple terms, you have contract law,
Yep.
which is the law of the sea, shall we say. And what that means is you have contract law in common law, but contract law, you only have contract law in the law of the sea because it's the law between legal entities, or the personam in res, the things. Then you have common law, which is there to protect the person. And common law is often expressed in case law. So you could say statute expresses contract law.
Yeah.
So the millions of statutes that are there to design and confuse.
Yeah.
Then you have common law, which is do no harm, take no. I love Mark Devlin. Do no harm, take no shit.
Yeah.
That's Mark Passio as well. So, and common law, and I give my thanks to Mark Horn for this. That's expressed in case law, because case law, someone has sat down and considered a particular. The judges have sat down and they said, in this case, in these circumstances, this is the law. Now that law is being specific, and remember, case law can't be undone unless there's another case that says, oh, we've clarified this.
Yeah.
And there's a really good example of that. Whereas in 1968, there was a case where the appeal court said, yes, statute has to be sovereign, because otherwise people could just do what they want. And then there was another case in 2011 said that's actually nonsense, because statute cannot prevail. Parliament does not have that authority. Parliament is a servant. It's the servant of the people. And I can't remember this film. It may well be something like Working Girl, one of those films, and when they're talking about head of a corporation and someone says, well, he can't do that, he's not God.
Yeah.
One turns to the other, says, well, you're going to tell him, or because if you think about it, that's what you're dealing with now. You're dealing with these self-made paper gods who are heads of corporations. So you've got the UK, head of the UK corporation was the Queen, and is Prince Charles. He's not yet the monarch, and actually can't properly be sworn in as a monarch. There's a difference between a monarch and a head of state. Head of state, UK corporation head. So that's the big corporation. Then you've got UK government, another corporation, HMRC, all these corporations. Yeah. They all have these chief executives like Boris Johnson or James Allen Harrow, who's the first secretary permanent chief head of HMRC. And then it goes on, and you've got these lovely folks who are utility CEOs, and but they're all paper gods. They actually don't really have any authority unless you consent with them. So the long story short, what is equity? Well, equity sits above. So you've got the law of the sea, the law of the land, and equity is deemed to be the law of the air. And the air brings the sea onto the land and forms a resolution. And there are maxims of equity. So that there's no time bar in equity. As soon as you know about something, equity will not serve one who sits on their hands.
Yeah.
But if you don't know for 30 years, you're not statute barred. Statute barred. I think the clue is in the words there. So all of your solicitors and barristers, they only really know statute law. They swear an oath of loyalty to the bar, which is a private organisation. And every single judge in this country also swears a public oath, which means if you challenge the presumption that they can sit in both, they have to remove themselves from court. So these are all ways in which the system has been perverted, and it's been perverted to basically create private corporations that are going to take your money and your life away from you.
And there is a way you can dispute this, and that's the whole point of everything we're doing. So
where do we draw the line in the sand? So first, we know this, and that's fine, and that's how it is. Do not get angry about it. No. Do not worry about it. Do not start running around saying these people are criminal, because he who makes the claim must prove the claim. Remember, we said earlier, there are rules to this game, and there are rules that we must play by, that we don't know because we've been taught drafts, but they are the rules that they play by. And the rules are, if you make a claim, you've got to prove it. So even yesterday, someone sent me a letter, and he's been doing months of research. And I said, look, mate, you're making like claims every sentence. You are this, you are that. Ask questions. Yeah. You must pay me £1,000. Thank you very much. Tell me why I must pay you £1,000. Where's the contract? Where's the agreement? Where's this, that, and the other? And the first, before you do that, and this is where we get to, I have received a letter addressed to Wendy, but we think that James Allen Harrow must be mistaken, because the letter says you must pay this and you must do that. Well, as we are not you, we are returning your letter, and would be grateful if James Allen Harrow would pass the letter on to you. And this is how they deceive within the system. But the very simple thing is, you've got to draw a line in the sand, and you draw a line in the sand by disputing. And you are doing this privately before you go public, because the court does not want people going to court unless they've tried to resolve the issue before they go to court. And as long as there is a dispute open, then there can be no payments taken. Yes, a dispute means there's a cease and desist in place. And even if you read the Electricity Act and Schedule 6, it says if they want to fit a prepayment meter, it can only be for monies owing. And if there's a dispute, they can't exercise any rights of entry for that purpose. So what they do is they're now getting rights of entry for the entire section of the Act, which automatically says the magistrate did not apply their mind to the matter, and therefore any order or warrant is void. Which is, these are all the helpful things, aren't they, that people need to really know about. I mean, the purpose of what Troy and I we hope we're sort of getting across to you today is that you have power in what you do when you have the knowledge behind it. That's the thing. And that, these illusionary spaces we've been put into, where we think people will go, when you talk about electricity, water and gas, these things were meant to be free to the people of this, I'm just going to say this country. Well, they are actually, if you look at what they charge you for. Yeah, they are free. And they're free to private individuals that are not corporations or companies. Up here, not down there. Yeah, so this is the thing where people are getting, they'll say to me, well, who's going to pay for it? Someone's got to pay for it. And it's like all the commercial properties pay plenty for everybody else, and taxation, everything, it's already all paid for. You're just paying for a meter that's in your house. That's pretty much the end result of it.
So as far as my understanding, they're not supplying me with anything. No one comes and digs up my road when I change from Eon to Utility Warehouse to whoever and puts in their own infrastructure.
Yeah, leave the same meter there.
You know, when someone changes supplier, it's still the national grid that sends the power through of whatever description. It's not one of these, I could just call them third party agents that are just charging for you for the use of their property that you have in your property.
And this is knowledge. And don't remember, when you say who's going to pay for it, don't ask yourself that question. Ask them how much the energy costs. Ask them if this is an equitable contract with fair and equal exchange.
Yeah.
I knew about contract, and I was seeing all this thing which basically said sod off to, and I thought, no, I've got to ask a proper question. Now, in a contract negotiation, these are valid questions. Where is the contract? Who are the contracting parties? Was there full disclosure? And where's fair and equitable consideration being given? So I'm giving you money. And by the way, everyone, just a little thing, you cannot change the terms of a contract without agreement. And even their bullshit contracts that they say, this is our tariff, yeah? They can't change the tariff without your agreement. I'll repeat that. They cannot change the tariff without their agreement, even under their rules.
And this is, again, it's part of the hoodwinking, isn't it? The keeping the knowledge hidden and us just thinking, oh, I've got to pay that now because they've said I've got to pay it.
And it's really difficult to break out of that. And me telling you that, and you could put it in a letter, you're not going, essentially, in very simple terms, people should be aware that you need to create a dispute. You always need to send people 3 notices. You always stay in honour by there's only 4 ways you can respond to an honour, to an offer. You can accept it, you can decline it, which often means you've accepted it. You can argue, which means you've accepted it, or you can conditionally accept, which means they have to provide you with information. The one thing, back to your point, Wendy, you made about, like, I know I'm a living person. I know I should be on that side of the line, but I'm having to play on the public side of the line. There's nothing wrong with the public side of the line, except the way it's being exploited against you.
And that is, I think, the main point, isn't it?
Yeah.
The system that we have, there's certain aspects of it we need, you know, for engaging in life in general and for keeping some order. So it's not like we're wanting to bring a system down. We just want to teach people that when it's not equitable on both sides, there is something you can do. It pretty much is as simple as that. So,
and that is standing in your rights. You write to them. They do not respond. They keep doing what they're doing. You then, in very simple terms, you get it to court as quickly as possible.
Yes, because in that space, then it will be heard in an equitable space. And as long as you've kept, like I have, big files on things, make sure everything's logged, sent, signed for delivery, there's no abusive text in there whatsoever, that you're not, like you say, making demands on people, that you're just asking as king questions, then you're going to get a result if you end up in that space.
So if every single customer of E.ON and British Gas raised a dispute, they go to British Gas, you must resolve this dispute. They try and get a warrant. By the way, these warrants that they're getting, it's appalling. But you can void the warrant, and then you can put up a notice saying these warrants are void. Anyone attempting to enforce this warrant will be guilty of trespass. And you can send that to the police and say, if these people turn up, the warrant is void, the court have been advised, the court doesn't have to agree. If you've got due, but this is, I think the thing is, people are taught the basics and they think that will work for them. But we all know at every turn, something will happen and everyone's something will be different.
Yeah.
And that's where discernment comes in. And you say, what has really happened to me here? What is it I need to do? Now, I know my objective. I've got those tools that I've used. Is there something in my kit bag that I can use? Or do I need to go and find something? to put into my kit bag to use. And what I would say is I'm helping people, but I'm giving people too much help.
You need to be able to stand on your own. I mean, you've seen the difference, I suppose, just to finish with. One thing I've been doing, I received a letter back, which I read to you this morning, which I found was quite amusing, because I've actually got a person has engaged and signed this, and it's been like, now this is interesting. And it actually, in this letter, they've stated they cannot find any evidence of having a contract with me, but they're asking for payment from me. And it's like, you crazy people, you've literally just stated this in this sentence. So I sent a lovely letter back. I've sent it with, you know, a joyous, happy, loving energy. And I feel that the energy you put into things, Troy, when you send things back, is going to give you a result anyway, because it's
absolutely.
I sent that back. I literally, as I went posted it, I had my hands on my heart and I was just sending love with it. Like, there you go, have love, because we're at the end of the road with that one now. They've admitted liability that they do not have a contract with me.
As you reap, so shall you sow.
Yeah.
So you do things in love and you will get love back. You do things in non-love and you will get non-love back. And
that is like, amen to that, because that is basically how the universe works.
Yeah. And that's why they've got us immoral and doing satanic things. And we're saying, I must have said this before, but one of the greatest lines I've ever heard in a film is where Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, Peter Cook's the devil, it's the 7 deadly sins, and Dudley Moore's Stanley.
Yeah.
And Peter Cook is doing a devilish thing. He stopped a lorry full of LPs, you know, vinyl, that's for the old people. Yeah. And they're getting through the window, he's scratching them, putting them back and putting them back in the lorry. That's the devil at work.
Yeah.
And Stanley comes up and he says, I'm so confused. I don't know who to believe. And the devil says, not me, Stanley, believe me. Now that's the satanic world. Once you think, like you said about statute is there to confuse.
Yeah.
The people in charge don't seem to know what they're doing.
No.
They say you can create your own universe, and then they tell you you're going to have to pay thousands of pounds for utilities. It's deliberately, that sentence, that answer sums up the world we live in.
Yeah. So start tuning into your heart, and it's as simple as that. Tune back into self. Know who you are. Do things out of that space. Get the knowledge. You know, the fear will still be there, but like I say, it's just walking through it and
put your kit bag on your back and set out into the wilderness, headed for that place. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know what sort of person you're going to be when you get there, but you will get there. And that's why you've got to follow your nose.
Yeah.
You've got to go the way that that's the way I'm going. That's your way.
Yeah. And this is the thing where I think a lot of people, I wanted to finish a moment ago on something we said, but I think this is where a lot of people are falling short at the moment, because they're wanting to just have templates for everything.
Yeah.
Send me a template, send me a template. And, you know, the templates, realistically, guys, they're not going to help you. It's going through the process of developing the knowledge yourself, not through trial and error. There's a lot of good people out there to give you some guidance. It is just learning the language, learning why you're doing something. And then when you learn the why, because I know people that are doing this out of anger and spite, and these people, you know, and the funny thing is they're doing it with the same companies I'm doing it with, and the results they're getting are not like what I'm getting.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I read you this morning was like, wow, that's interesting, isn't it? Not had one of them before. Yeah. So it's because it's been, what I've been doing has been in a different, I've not been sending it with hate and spite. I've just been like curiosity. Curiosity. I'm curious as to give me these answers. You're not giving me answers. I'm curious.
I finally got there. It took me a while as well. Like, I know the stuff, but what do we say? You know, it's your emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental
body,
getting them all together. And this is not some sort of la nonsense, right? This really, really does work. Just wake up one morning and say, I'm just going to be happy, right? And you can do this. See how people react to you. It will be different.
Massively. The energy you give out, you get back. We're electromagnetic beings, you know.
And we're all energetic. Just think if about 50 of you gathered together and we're just all, wow. You know, but what they say is, you must protest. Well, already that's a low vibrational energy. You must petition and we will ignore you. That's a low vibrational energy. Just, you don't have to go out and find people. They will find you. You will magnetize people back towards you. I haven't looked to do any of this, but I thought, I want to do this for myself, And other people have come along and they've been incredibly helpful. You've been incredibly helpful, Wendy. And it's like, I could never have mapped this way.
No, same here. And it's for me, like I say, when I found you,
yeah,
I was asking for a solution. I was like, I have this and I need a solution. And then Troy pops up. And it was like, I'm just going to reach out to Troy and see if he has an answer to this. And you did. And
I gave you an answer, but you took it and made it your answer. You didn't just, some people have been taking it and then they get back to me, but different people are
at different levels of development, Troy.
Yeah, and no one should be saying, no, you should know this, because people don't know what they don't know. And some people, it will take 3 goes, other people will be there before you're even there. That's why that's why this biblical stuff is quite important, because you've got to love your neighbor. And love, not like, or give them a Christmas card. Love thy neighbor as yourself.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that's a whole nother conversation, because the love thyself, it's been drummed out of us. That's not a good thing to do. So it's getting into that, to the self, and then once you're in the space in yourself, it's so easy to give it to other people. What
you said earlier about not being able to say words, when you find yourself, it catches in your throat.
Yeah.
That's a really important signal. Why is it? Someone once said, I can't even say it, but I know, I can't remember the words, but as I went to say them, I couldn't say it. And that was why she'd asked me to say it.
Yeah. And then it's a learning, isn't it? It's a learning, getting that thing off your chest. Well, anyway, we're out of time this morning. We've probably gone over, actually. Django's done a great job of holding it out for us. So I just want to try say thank you again. And obviously you're going to be coming back, because we've probably not covered anything we wanted to this morning, which is excellent.
Again. I blame you for that. I don't blame. It's not within me for that.
Just blame the host of the radio show. But I just want to thank all the listeners. It's the
blame game. It's all those sorts of things. It's by the way, that was really good, because it really helps to get these things in your head. Like, the thought becomes the action. And
it does.
In the beginning was the word.
Yeah, it's the embedded learning, isn't it? The more we talk about it, the more we learn, the more we can help others. It's all about just, if we all get into that space, like I say, we're going to be walking into a different consciousness before we know what's happened. It'll be lovely.
Because it goes boom, and they are shit scared of that.
Yes.
They know.
And my mum would always say, if you're going to talk about they, tell me who they are.
Well,
I think we did that on the initial.
Yeah, and the definition of they is the ones who are dead set on global ultimate control of mankind. They hate mankind.
Yeah,
clearly. They probably hate themselves as well, and therein lies their fatal flaw.
Yeah, because we don't, and we're going to bring it all back to love, Troy. It's as simple as that. So
in this life or the next,
indeed.
or the next. You still get those thoughts at 4 o'clock in the morning when you wake up and you go, oh shit.
Yeah, I just stick love into them. I'm going back to sleep. I'm not interested in that right now. So
anyway, I think I better go, because my son's been trying to ring me.
Trying to get in. No worries. Well, Troy, thank you again. Thank you to all the listeners. Thank you, Django, for giving us a few extra minutes. And we're just going to spread the love now, guys. It's as simple as that. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Starting with thine self. Start with yourself. Start with thou. By the way, you're not you, you're thou.
You're thou. Yeah, we'll go through the language. My mum will love one on language. Right, Troy, lovely to see you again, my friend, and speak to you. And I will speak to you again soon.
Cheers.